Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott. Joining me once again this week, the flea on the back of my dragon, it's Dan. Hey, Dan.
Good evening, Scott. How's it going over there on that side of the country? Hot?
It has been, from what I've heard, it's fairly been hot and sweltering for the most part. I don't get to go out as much due to the injured nature of myself, as you know. The thing that's cool that we've been getting, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this because we all get it from time to time, we've been getting some amazing, I mean, at least just based on audio levels alone, amazing thunderstorms. Like, the kind of thunder you hear and you think, oh, that's like something that you do in a movie. It doesn't sound real. It's just like the beginning of Independence Day or something. That's not real thunder. Not that there's thunder in that movie. I just made up a movie, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like I was just sitting in the living room watching something, and I literally muted the TV. I just wanted to listen to it because I was like, oh my God, that sounds awesome. I almost want to record this for the podcast or something. But, like when we did the Speedweed thing. I just realized no one's going to remember what I'm talking about, right? Anyway,
I haven't thought about him for a while. He's a real guy. Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite dumb things we ever did on the podcast was the Speedweed moment of the week or whatever it was, and recording with the echo and the thunder.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Just really, really lame anecdotes about things we assumed Speedweed was responsible for.
Yeah, we've actually gotten a few new listeners since then. We should explain. I'll do it in a nutshell. Back in the day, or a few years back, Dan and I, as well as a few other folks, we used to record a podcast covering the CW DC shows. And one of them, of course, was, the one that started all was Arrow. And we noticed at one point in the credits for Arrow, one of the guys' names, and I think he was a writer. I think you're right. I think he was a writer. He just went by the name Speedweed. And I went, did anyone notice the credits? And the guy's name is Speedweed? And I was like, yeah. It's like, what the hell is that? So we eventually, every time we talked about something like really bizarre, and it wasn't just like Arrow. It could be any of the CW shows. Because, they're all very incestuous to begin with. We'd call it like, oh, that must have been a Speedweed idea or something. So then we eventually recorded this little sound clip. I think we did like I overlaid it with my voice echoing a couple times. We added some special effect. I think there's like a thunder and lightning kind of thing. It was like, it was me going, the Speedweed moment of the week or something.
And sometimes there'd just be goofy stuff, but sometimes we would like give him all the credit for like something really good on the show too.
Oh yeah, we just figured he could do no wrong. I don't think, yeah, right. I don't think we ever said it was anything bad. It could be something bizarre or strange, but we like bizarre and strange. Those shows could use more bizarre and strange, quite frankly, instead of what they've become. Actually, this week's Flash was actually not bad. I can't believe I'm saying that because it's been such a crappy season. But anyway, that is not what we're here to talk about. We'll be talking about a considerably better comic book related show, at least at this point, because we're here to talk about the final episode of Loki. We will also, later on in the podcast, be giving our, since I don't think we've planned it, I'll just say potentially spoiler filled, only because I don't think either one of us are going to be going out of our way to avoid spoilers. It just depends on the conversation. We might not spoil the movie at all. And I'm talking about Black Widow, of course. I don't know if we're going to spoil it. But I'm saying I'm not going to go out of my way to try not to spoil it, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Yeah, we're mostly going to be talking. I can say right now, I think 80% of what I'm going to be talking about is pushing back on people talking about Scarlett Johansson's butt. But anyway, but before
Yeah, we got to do before we get to that, talking about the movie, eh?
No, for now. Anyway, we want to take care of some, I'll call it little bits of STVD podcast news, and certain things that have happened that I wanted to just get out of the way before we get into our Loki conversation. First and foremost, the most important thing I would say, it had been mentioned at some point, I think when I did the final countdown episode on the greatest TV drama episodes, that we were planning to do a Breaking Bad rewatch podcast. And we had to work out the details, but we knew we wanted to do it for the rest of this year, and we didn't know how far it would go into 2022. I had concerns. I was worried about other shows overlapping. I was worried about doing it at the same time as Better Call Saul would come back, because I didn't know when that's coming back. And even though my friend from AMC was doing the podcast with me, he wasn't allowed to tell me, the bastard. So, but honestly, let's be honest. None of those were my real concerns. My concern was just wanting to commit to doing 20 or 30 podcasts because that can be time consuming, and especially for I mean, not to make myself all, but for me personally, it's because it's not just the watching. I spend, X number of hours putting together like the notes and the outlining. Like, that's a lot to do, especially since we're not getting paid for it. But after talking to you a few weeks back and just, figuring out both our lives and schedules, I figure what we're going to do is this. We're going to be covering, there'll be 9 podcasts between, from August through January, on Breaking Bad. So we'll try to keep them within, knock on wood. We'll try to keep them within a 2-hour framework. But, once I've said that, they'll end up being 3. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully. So here's the plan, people. Starting next month, and by next month I mean August, in case, one's listening to this in the future and they get confused. We will be releasing a Breaking Bad rewatch podcast. I don't know if I'll come up with a more catchy name for it. We will be releasing one every 3 weeks. That will take us to, I guess, roughly the 3rd week of January. Because I'm going to go on my own assumption here that Better Call Saul is going to return in February, since most of the time they've come back in February. 2 times they didn't. I feel for their final season, it's going to be February. And even if they don't, it might be a little later, a little earlier, who cares? But I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do. The first,
unfortunately, we don't have insider information. Yeah, and if Speedweed worked on the show and we knew him, he'd probably fucking tell us.
Oh, so. He would have told us. We would have.
Oh God, yeah.
We'd have been doing some edibles, whatever.
That's for no reason.
So the first podcast. So everyone needs to listen up for this part. The first podcast will be released on August 6th. That's the number between 5 and 7, because I know my list makes some numbers funny to hear. So that should be 3 weeks after the day this podcast you're listening to has dropped, which should be on Friday, July 16th. That podcast is going to cover all of season 1. Season 1 was just, as we all should know at this point, just 7 episodes. So that's going to be season 1, August 6th. From that point on, every 3 weeks, we're going to be covering, a half of a season. So obviously 3 weeks later, the first half of season 2. 3 weeks after that, the second half, and so on and so forth. It'll probably be like 7 episodes, one podcast, 6 episodes in the next, because I think seasons 2 through 4 were all 13 episode seasons. And the last one is a 16 episode season, so it'll be 8 and 8. That's how we're going to do it. We have, obviously, as time goes, we'll see. Sometimes it might just be me and Dan. We might have guests. Jamie and or Brian might join us. We might have other friends join us. It depends on people's schedules and how much they can commit to. It's definitely going to be the 2 of us. And yes. I'm really looking forward to it, because if there's one show that you and I should be able to talk all the live long day about, I feel that's a show that we should be able to roll out of bed and can start talking about. It's a show like Breaking Bad.
Yep, and that'll be a good warm up too for our subsequent Longmire podcast, which will start after that. While we're hanging out in New Mexico.
Oh, Longmire, Frasier, gotta make up your mind. You might convince me on you have a better shot at convincing me on doing a Frasier podcast than long as I haven't watched Longmire. Because that way we can finally have our debate on the show, and not a real debate, just, we can do the whole cheers to Frasier, Breaking Bad to Better Call Saul, and, which is the better spin-off, which is, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. Yeah. Okay, so that's first news item. Second, and then I know you don't care about this, so if you'll restrain yourself just for a hot minute or two, but I personally wanted to give a shout out to, I'm sorry to say this, the Emmy nominations that were scored by a number of TV series that we actually have covered on this podcast.
Yeah,
which
how'd the boys get on it?
I'm so excited.
Wow.
That's my biggest and most pleasant surprise of all. Somehow, season 2 of The Boys got an outstanding drama series. Thank you, Emmys. You made my day with that one. Obviously, in that same category, the very opposite of surprise happened with The Crown, which I also with Kimber covered on this podcast, the most recent season, and of course The Crown pretty much got not just outstanding drama, but they scored nominations in essentially every single major acting category and beyond. I mean, Claire Foy got a nomination, and she appeared in one episode for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, maybe. I don't even think it was 3 minutes. So the only thing more absurd than her nomination I think it was for guest actress, because she only appeared in this one episode in this, flashback they created, was the fact that Don Cheadle got a guest nomination for basically like one scene in the first episode of that horrible Sammy and the Snowman Disney Plus crap.
He did? Wow.
He did. That's the most ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous nomination I've ever heard. The only thing the thing that kind of makes me happy about it, because I love Don Cheadle, is like, yeah, I love that he got a nomination for that crap, but no one else did. It just underscores how much I hate that show.
Well, yeah, there's just like a scene where he's just like disapproving that like Sam gives up the shield or something,
Yes.
and like.
Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up. Oh, thank you, because I didn't even think of that. Because the thing that one of my biggest criticisms of that stupid series was the whole thing about Sam giving up the shield. So I love the fact that the one nomination the show got, at least in any major category, was for the actor/character on the show who disapproved of that. So way to go, Amy.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought Perry Mason got a couple acting ones, but didn't get a series one. Is that correct?
That's where I was going next. Which, you know what? I'm okay with that. I if I was going to give it nominations outside of things like, cinematography or those kind of things, which I don't know about, I'd be more,
art direction or something.
Yeah, art direction. Absolutely. I'd be more inclined to acting nominations than, I don't know if the show would quite make my list for drama series or even writing for that matter. But the fact that Matthew Reeves and I love that John Lithgow got a nomination for it, because I thought he could have been very easily overlooked, other than the fact his name is John Lithgow, and maybe that might have helped rise to the top here. Also, the show that me and you covered, freaking WandaVision went nuts with the nominations.
Yeah, what the heck?
I mean, hey, we really like the show, but whoa, is this because it was such a dearth of of shows for nominations for the Emmys? Because part of me thinks that when I see, like this and Handmaid's Tale got 8,000 nominations. But yes, it got for, I think, Best Limited Series, and I think Olsen, Bettany, and Han, yay for her, all got nominations as well. Another show that me and Kimberly covered on that Crown podcast, the one we all knew was going to get nominated for a ton of stuff. In that same category, Queen's Gambit scored a bunch of nominations. By the way, it deserves to win more than WandaVision, but we'll see what happens there. Anya Taylor-Joy and two of her co-stars got nominations as well. And finally, just because I reviewed it last week, hey, Hacks got nominated for comedy series, as did Jean Smart and a couple of her co-stars. So if Jean Smart doesn't win, there's something wrong with there is something wrong with the Emmys. We know that already. Okay. And one last thing. This would be the briefest thing of the three. Because I'm going to mention it at the end of the podcast, but just in case people turn it off because they don't want to hear us talk about Black Widow or something, I'll mention it here as well. We now have an Instagram account. Believe it or not, we finally, after 7.5 years, have an Instagram account. So if anyone wants to follow us there, and please do. I mean, I'm trying to convince people, you don't even have to listen to us. Just follow us there, because other people say they'll want to listen to us because so many people are following us. Whatever. You can find us on Instagram. It's basically just serious TV drama as one word. The podcast will be posted there, but other photos are posted that do like some silly stuff about, everything from underrated TV shows or TV props or whatever. Any number of things can pop up there. Much more so than our Twitter account, which you should also follow, but you'll hear that at the end of the podcast. And that is all the news. Okay. Ooh, I'm already worn out. We haven't even started talking about Loki yet. So, Dan, let's unwrap and dig into the season finale of Loki. And before we get into the breakdown, before we get into all the usual scene by scene nonsense and whatever, let's just get the big piece of business out of the way from the start. Okay. So we've been talking about this for weeks now. And I know I have to be careful of how we phrase this because I know it's not exactly correct. So
Yeah, I've got this. How the fuck didn't they bring Alligator Loki back for the finale? Seriously.
Well, now that we know there's a season 2.
Ooh.
So you know. Oh, by the way, I'm going to make a prediction here. I can't. Usually predictions happen at the end of the podcast. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it front. If Disney Plus decides to do any sort of like little webisodes or mini things, they are totally going to come up with a spin-off with classic Loki and Alligator Loki. They have to. They just have to.
Oh, that would be cool.
They just have to. Anyway. No, obviously, the big business that went, like, hey, guess what, everybody? It turns out it's Kang. Or, to be more precise about it, it's a variant of Kang. You know, most likely Immortus, who I know you can confirm with greater knowledge on that subject. I have a little bit written about him, you know, but not, I don't really want to, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole right off the bat on the podcast, but, you know, essentially, we'll just say it right now because we can talk about it a bit more later. Immortus is an alternate version, or should we say variant, of Kang the Conqueror. And because once you saw that it was Jonathan Majors, we had already discussed on a previous podcast, as probably every single podcast that covers the show has absolutely mentioned, we all have known that he is the actor who is slated to play Kang in the next Ant-Man movie. What some of these folks might not be mentioning is that Ant-Man movie is not coming out till February of 2023. Huh. So it's a ways down the road. It's not coming out next year. It's coming out, you know, the year after that.
Yeah. You know, I figured we were going to end up seeing Immortus in this episode, but I never once considered that they could just have the actor that plays Kang play, you know, Ramatut and all these other, you know, Scarlet Centurion, these other forms of Kang and stuff. I never even thought about that. It just seems like so obvious. In hindsight, even though they didn't have, you know, Hiddleston playing all the Lokis, but it's still pretty cool that they can do that and chose to do that.
Right. In a way, they almost, although they didn't have Hiddleston playing all the Lokis, he did play at least one other variant of Loki. So we were already shown that was a possibility because he was President Loki was him too, right? So and the joke I would make. So basically, what I give them, and there's going to be a few things I'm going to give the show and the people behind it a lot of credit for during this podcast. But right off the bat, I'm just saying, you know, they actually got to have their cake and eat it too, or had their Kang and whatever in the timeline too, because it's like I said, it's Kang, but it's not Kang, but it still is. And they were able to get away with it. Was very sly, and you can't really disagree with it because they kind of hinted at this with the whole Loki variant thing and the fact that obviously there are a number of people, maybe not the majority of viewers, but a number of people like you, for example, who know stuff about the comics or have read the comics, and they're aware, there are actually multiple versions or variants, if you want to use their speak, of that character. This is the show to kind of pull that off with. So it's just very smart of them. But what's great about it is that now, we don't know if the next time we're going to see Jonathan Majors, if it's going to be in the second season of Loki, because who knows when that will actually drop, or maybe the next time we'll see him will be in that Ant-Man Quantumania movie. But either way, the next time we see him, he's not going to be the same guy, as he mentioned a number of times in this very episode. So, which is almost too bad because I loved him in this episode, but we'll talk about that more later. I have a hope, you know, but it's just, what's really interesting about him is, I guess I will talk a little bit about it, is just the way he went about this character that we met and what he and him having been the creator, I should say, of the TVA and everything else that's been going on, that there's something, he's kind of fun, he's personable, he's laid back. And then you realize the next one is probably going to be like, you know, it could be like Thanos Part 2 type of guy. And I just like the idea. And again, another thing, bookmark it. because we're going to be talking about this later for sure. In some ways, and I don't know if this would hold true specifically for the comics, in my mind, I wouldn't have thought of it that way. But in terms of how they're going about things in the MCU and what they've established with this series, in a lot of ways, he's a bigger deal than Thanos. Because, but again, I think it's obvious, but we'll talk about it later. So, all right. It's just, this was probably one of the few huge things about this episode. There's a few others that really impact the future of the MCU in a way that just was bigger than anything that WandaVision ended up pulling off. And again, me and you, we were fans of WandaVision, although I think we also agreed the final episode was, it was fine, but it wasn't as good as we wanted it to be.
It was a little bit too loud and stupid.
Exactly. But I just love with the Kang reveal, that it completely reverses the thing that I was so concerned about last week. And things that we had said during our, like our WandaVision podcast, if you go back, cause they, here, they didn't Mephisto us here, they were, where, laying clue after clue for a major Marvel villain, only to never pay it off. And now they kind of proven, hey, although the previous two series kind of made us think, I guess they can never introduce a truly major character or feature a major player in one of these series. Although one might say that Julia Louis-Dreyfus might be a bit of a major player, but we'll get to her, probably in the last hour of this podcast. But, remember we were saying, they can't do Mephisto, they can't do Reed Richards, they can't even have Doctor Strange show up. And now, once this happened, maybe we need to prune that way of thinking, because maybe now it's Disney. Maybe anything is possible, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so, like I said, my initial impression, I think both of our initial impressions is with him and what they were doing is it's not a one note or one dimensional man behind the curtain kind of performance. There's a lot more going on there. We're going to talk about it more, but I would recommend, for anyone who hasn't already watched the episode a second time, watch it a second time and just really focus on him.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that he does and the way he says certain things they're better than I would have given him. And I've seen the actor before. Obviously, he was the main character in Lovecraft Country. I've seen him in something else, which is, I'm forgetting right now. I know he's done other things. I was just floored by how much I enjoyed his performance in it.
He was terrific. I mean, just, managed to be wise, funny, and clearly just had enough broken nuts all at the same time.
Yes.
It's definitely
yes.
If he can do all that in 10 seconds, just imagine what he can do playing, different characters, complete bastard bad guys or weird hanging out in Egypt for no fucking reason bad guys. And it's just kind of a lot of potential.
I am excited by the idea of, obviously those are going to be the main one that we're going to see in either be this show or Ant-Man or both, whatever. But yes, the possibility of seeing those other variants that they referred to, which it seems like they're opening the door for that. So we may get the opportunity to, like you said, to see him in multiple roles. And I am all there for that. I want, give me more. The other thing, which again, somewhat surprising in this reveal, and I was glad about this, I have to say, despite the fact we have been talking about this, despite the fact, we've been many of us were awaiting this, and even though we were saying, well, it can't be Kang because it's too obvious, or they wouldn't do that. Even when that reveal happened, it didn't really take away from it. And I'm surprised by that, because usually, if we know something's going to happen, even if it's well executed, we're still but I didn't get that. I was still oh my God, it's Kang. It still worked. I think it was because it became, oh my God, they actually can do it. I can't believe it.
Yeah, that was pretty ballsy how they did it.
Ballsy is the word for this episode. Yes, there's a couple things that are very fucking ballsy in this episode.
Yeah, and that isn't something you can always say about Disney with this kind of stuff either. I mean, they don't really, tend to stick their necks out with, Star Wars stuff or sometimes the Marvel stuff. They tend to be kind of, a little more conservative with like their stuff. So when they like make big leaps like this, it's just like, oh, who the hell they're letting run this, or like, do they like get rid of their like boring producers or something? Like, not that it was bad before, but this is just like a different kind of stuff they're doing.
Absolutely. And I mean, I remember I heard or read a criticism or someone posted something somewhere. I don't remember. Might have been on a YouTube thing or something. I saw it in the last 24 hours after I'd already watched the episode, and I was skimming around, and someone was disapproving of the episode because they felt, oh, this whole thing has just been a big lead up just to introduce a character who's going to be in a movie, whatever. And that's that. It's like, well, first of all, it's not just that. And number two, did you not catch the mid-credit thing where it tells you there's going to be a second season? So no, it's not about just teasing for a movie. It's about this is going to be playing into the next season of this show. Like most TV shows have done for the last, half a century. Just made me so mad. It's like, you should not be like, I know the person, I know who he is, I know he's a big deal talking about TV all the time, and he's on other podcasts, and I probably just gave away more than I should have. I'll probably get shit for it, I don't care. But, don't troll just for troll's sake. Just shut up. Anyway. Well, I'm gonna get in trouble for that. Anyway, but I don't think he listens, so I don't really care. But his friends do. Anyway, let's get to the episode. One overall comment I wanted to make at the outset, as we're diving in here. I really thought it was interesting. And again, I do this thing where, from the writer's perspective, duh. I thought it was really weird or interesting that this is a series, and especially when it's only 6 episodes, that began with an episode that we all noted was very exposition heavy, and it ends with an episode that's also got a lot of info dumping and Kang-splaining and whatever you want to call it. So there's a weird full circle thing. And shockingly enough, I do not mean that as a criticism. Most of the time, that would be a criticism. I don't mean it as one here. And again, that goes back to us talking about his performance. That performance sells it. That makes it work. He doesn't do that good a job with it, or they just did if they give us like a 15-minute missed minutes video or something, I would have been pissed off about it. But it pulled it off. So
yeah, they're doing compelling stuff, and they're having good actors deliver the stuff. If it's Owen Wilson or him, I mean, it's just kind of like Jonathan Banks giving his half-measure speech, where it's just like, story you've heard a million times, but it's done so well, you don't really care, and then you can understand like there's also like different layers going on, and explains the way this character's doing that. It relates to Loki in this way and Sylvie in this way, and if you take the time about it, there's a lot of meat on those bones.
Oh yeah, and again, because I'm going to start doing it in a more chronological look at the episode now. But yeah, when we get to those scenes, again, it's the choices he makes, and this is the actor, and maybe and most likely the director as well. I'm sure it was a collaborative effort here. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself because then I'll get all jumbled later on in the podcast. But I was just going, I remember just going, that's an interesting choice. That's the way he hits a certain word or a certain movement he made or gesture. It's like, oh, he's doing a lot with a scene where this could have been just a very dry, recitation of things. So I really was impressed with it. Anyway.
Like classic comic immortus is just like, kind of boring and stodgy for the most part. So this was like just a real fresh take because the generic man behind the curtain thing it would have been fine, but it wouldn't. We've seen it so many fucking times.
I mean, it's a trope. It's it's everything from Wizard of Oz to Lost, and beyond.
Right.
I was just going to make another joke and I totally forgot what it was. So I guess I'll file it away for another time because I can't remember. So let me start to walk through the episode here. And you know what? Talk about lists. Let's start with the Marvel Studios logo. All season, I have enjoyed the fact that it's been done in Loki's familiar green and gold. It's little things like that. I like little touches like that. I'm the guy who, when I go see a movie, they messed with the logo for Warner Brothers or Universal or something little. I get a kick out of stuff like that. But over that logo, and then the action, and from that logo, and then as the episode starts, the actual visualization of I guess the so-called sacred timeline as it wends and winds its way, through the universe and to the castle beyond the void. Throughout all of that, we hear this cacophony of voices. And like during the MCU logo, the Marvel Studios logo, it's the MC, what we're hearing are all these different lines of dialogue from MCU characters throughout the history of their films. Now, I'm going to be that guy who's going to tell you everything you heard because that's what Scott does, because I'm an idiot. So the only thing I didn't like, okay, it's Sam Wilson when I liked him before that TV show. Right off the bat, you get Sam Wilson from Civil War saying, "Way to go, Tic Tac." Then you hear Hope Van Dyne from Ant-Man saying, "That's how you punch." Obviously, you hear T'Challa saying "Wakanda forever." You know what that movie is from. Then you hear Scott Lang from Ant-Man saying, "You wouldn't have ever heard of me." Then you hear Natasha Romanoff saying, "Let me put you on hold" from the Avengers. Peter Quill from Guardians of the Galaxy saying, "Dance off, bro." Thor saying he's a friend from work from, of course, Ragnarok, the good Thor movie. Then you have like two lines from Steve Rogers, because it's both the 2012 and the 2023 Steve Rogers talking to each other. The "I can do this all day, yeah, I know" from Avengers Endgame. Then yet another Ant-Man quote. "I'll show you ferocity." That's Hank Pym from Ant-Man. So it's interesting that they're leaning really heavily into all the Ant-Man quotes here. "Higher, further, faster, baby." That's Carol Danvers from Captain Marvel. Loki gets his shot here. He gets to say, "We have a Hulk." Obviously, that's from Infinity War. Then you got, "We're going to jump on that spaceship and get out of here. Want to come?" That's Korg from Thor Ragnarok, which is, take away a titty. Anyway, I know it's not how you pronounce his name. That's how I pronounce his name because it's funnier that way. And that's all during the logo. When we move into, like I said, when we're following the timeline, then they start to fold in real life people and their quotes. So in the first one that you hear that a lot of people probably didn't identify, I didn't. I had to look it up online. I don't mind admitting that. "We think of time as a one-way motion." That's philosopher Alan Watts. After that, you get an obvious one. You get Neil Armstrong saying, "One small step for man." But then, one a lot of us would recognize, you hear Greta Thunberg saying, "How dare they?" You have Malala saying, "My dream." You have Mandela saying, "We have fought for the right to experience peace." And all of a sudden, after all these really noteworthy people, I love this, all these admirable people, Malala, Mandela, and all of a sudden it's classic Loki saying "glorious purpose." Which I'm like, what? Then you have the former Liberian president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, saying "motivated by women throughout the world." And then right after that, all of a sudden, Vision saying, "What is grief if not love persevering?" Which, by the way, is one of the best lines from WandaVision, so I kind of like this. They stuck that one in. Then the last two is Maya Angelou saying, "I will rise." And I think the last discernible line of dialogue that one can make out is actually Sylvie saying, "Open your eyes," which that's kind of a nice one to end it on. The other thing that's worthy of mention during all this, I think in the latter half, if I'm not mistaken, not sure, or midway through, you also hear some different bits of music playing, which are different things, which I didn't feel like writing down, except for one, because it affected me a little bit. You hear the World War II era song, "It's Been a Long, Long Time." Just love the title, "It's Been a Long, Long Time." And it's notable, that's the music that they played at the close of Avengers Endgame, when we see Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter dancing together, which by the way, I guess would also count as an alternate timeline. So you start wondering, hey, did anybody prune Steve Rogers? Anyway. Oof. Okay. That culminates in the timeline leading directly to Loki and Sylvia's destination. So when they arrive at the castle door, obviously it's got that feel of, oh, look, Dorothy and Scarecrow have arrived at the gates of Emerald City. They're, looking for the wizard. Or as some might, because people like to be comparing the show to Lost, and I get they're not wrong with the parallels. You can't really deny them sometimes, like in the previous episode. Yeah, there's a little bit of feeling, hey, it's Ben and Locke, or is it Loki or Loki? Anyway, arriving at, I don't know if this would be the four-toed statue or the cabin. I guess maybe it would be the statue. I don't know. So, there's something that Sylvie says I thought was a little bit interesting, and I'll get into it more later as well. When she says to Loki that "I was pruned before you were born." And I thought that was interesting because, as we've been watching the series, and just in general, I think we had come to think of quote unquote, our Loki as the original Loki. I know when we saw classic Loki, then you have in your mind, oh, then because he represents the Loki that we know from, a certain era of comic books, he probably came first. But I think, we still were looking at him as original Loki. But if you look at things in a strictly time linear sense, he's not. So in the moment, I just started to wonder, wow, the classic Loki that we were talking about, would he be the first Loki? Or would there be another one before him? Again, it's not a factor in the show. It might not be a factor in the future seasons of the show, but I was just curious about it. I was just thinking, you'd think that eventually there would be, with all these different variants and whatever, who's the first Loki? I'm kind of curious about that. Is it her? Because the way it made her sound in her quest to do what she's been doing, it almost sounds like it might be,
Right.
Don't know.
Interesting.
I have one more thought about it later, but it's a totally stupid thing, but there's a reason I'm going to mention it later. I have it all noted, so I won't forget. So question, Dan.
Yes.
Again, if you want to just give me a one-word answer, I won't blame you for that. So it was hard for me not to notice you got all these glowing, spindly cracks throughout the surface of this castle. Do you think that was just part of the actual original design of this whole structure? Or is this an after effect of what's been going on with the sacred timeline and it's visualizing itself as what it's doing to the castle?
I can't answer that with one word, fucker. Man.
You're not going to say yes?
I kind of took it as more of just it's like a visual manifestation of like how Immortus or whatever version of He Who Remains is just kind of slowly slowly and just kind of like his mental state. That's kind of how I saw it. But,
Okay.
still keeping it together and stuff, but it's somewhat fragile and stuff. And clearly, like the second he got wasted, it all started breaking down and stuff. So I just think maybe something kind of like that.
Okay, so basically looking at I guess we find out a minute later, this is the Citadel at the end of time. That is basically almost like an extension of him and his state of mind and everything. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. That's why you make the big bucks. So they get inside and then we see Miss Minutes. Okay. Now beyond it, at least initially feeling kind of sort of creepy, I'm just curious. I know maybe not you, and obviously people who are listening to this can't answer me back, and God forbid they should comment on our Facebook thread or anything like that. I'm just curious if anyone else out there, even if it was just a fleeting moment, poof, just like that. But did you even just for a second think a joke that had been made, over the last few weeks by others, we might have done it on our podcast too, I do not remember. Did anyone just for a second think, oh my God, is Miss Minutes the actual true evil entity of the entire series or the universe? Because just for a second I was like, oh, Miss Minutes is a lot scarier than I thought.
There's definitely something menacing about that character, even though I watched the animated Star Trek series that came out last year, and there's a character that's on that show that's similar in a way. So I guess I was kind of expecting, a little bit, but still, it's interesting. These like goofy, animated characters can be like that.
Oh, right, yeah, and I am. Not that I'm all about patting ourselves or myself, whatever, on the back here, but I am very happy that in our very first podcast on Loki, that I did take the time to rave about Tara Strong and, her being the one who's doing the vocal performance for Miss Minutes. Cause especially in this episode, she's just perfect. I mean, when she offers him a deal and she's using her little southern twang, saying, those self-righteous Avengers, it's just perfect. It's touches like that, just, that makes me smile, and I don't smile very much. So.
Yeah, well, I suppose, Miss Minutes, would probably be back next season, but maybe not have like a compromised memory because things changed or whatever.
Oh, you know what they'll do? It'll be like a Mr. Minutes, and it'll be the clock face with a mustache, and then I'll get to get angry because, oh yeah, really? So you made him look like a classic '60s Doom Patrol villain is what you did, you rip off art. Just anyway. So I also, once again, probably one of my themes of this podcast will be, I think it needs to be noted one more time, and I'll note it again a little later on, how this series completely and deliberately goes out of its way, almost joyously, I would say, to undercut almost everything in the MCU from the previous decade. Because, once again, the fact that you have this character, in fact, that's Miss Minutes doing it initially, who can offer someone the chance to just kill Thanos. Yes, I snapped on purpose. Haha. Just shows what's going on here. It's just like the Infinity Stones being worthless paperweights, essentially. It just makes, and then you start realizing, but wait a minute, guys. You just spent over a decade and literally over $1 billion, detailing this entire quest for this Thanos and the stones. Almost every Marvel movie since Phase 1 has been leading up to that, and now it's kind of insignificant. That is ballsy. And my favorite little thing with her, just as we move to the next scene, is when she zips out of there, and of course she zips out, I was like, good luck with that. It's just the snark. I was like, oh, somebody being snarky to Loki. That's my favorite thing. Just like when Mobius does that to him. I was like, oh, I love someone else being snarky to him. But she zips out of there, and then she pops up in, very briefly, in, Ravonna Renslayer's office. Just to make sure she gets her files. But it turns out they're not the ones that she asked for, but the ones that he who remains feels she needs. So she pops out of it again, but I just want to stay with this. It's a quick scene. It's almost just like a slight breather for like 60 seconds or something like that. 90 seconds maybe. But even in this brief moment, I was like, okay, I guess they're confirming things that we believed, although there might be some differing opinions out there. Don't know. Now, it's my impression that Renslayer at this point, and first of all, number one, she absolutely does not know who is behind everything. I feel that is clear here.
Right.
Now, the question is, does she know about her own past? Because I can see the case being made either way. And obviously we'll talk about that later when we get to that scene. I know someone's going to say, oh, she must, because why else would she have that pen? I don't know if that necessarily means that. It might. You can make a better case that it does mean that than not. But if she's aware of her past, then she was going along with all this all along, knowing the truth, which also makes her just, again, a worse person in my eyes. I know. Again, we don't spend that much time with that character throughout this series, but I have so many questions about her, and obviously I'm 99% positive we will see her next season, so I'm curious where they're going to go with her, because she might be, for me, in some ways the most intriguing character, because I'm like, oh, there's so much more I want to figure out about her. Because at times I think, oh, you're just a bad person, and at sometimes I think, oh, maybe you're just misguided. I'm not sure. It's interesting. The last thing I want to say, then we can go back and we'll head back to the Citadel. I'm sorry. Does the TVA not have a cleaning staff? Does no one have Pledge or Windex or even a wet rag at the TVA? No one cleans that table? No one? Really? Anyway, I'm just thinking. It just occurs to me. They would have they have janitors. I'm sure they do. The Death Star had janitors, or they had little robots that cleaned things, whatever. Just bothers me. Anyway, so back to the Citadel. Okay, apparently there appears an elevator opens. First of all, the fact that there be an elevator in a structure like this already made me go, really? Okay. And that is when we see it's Jonathan Majors. And that's when we go, whoa! And then y'all can just rewind back to the podcast when we talked all about him. I love the whole business of him eating an apple. He does it here. He does it later in the episode as well. I love that kind of shit.
Oh, it's really cool.
Just to be silly, it's a very Brad Pitt Ocean's 11 style of acting. Because if you ever watched the Ocean's movie, Brad Pitt essentially is eating in almost every scene, and it's usually something like an apple. It's just one of these funny little actor tricks I've heard of. I'm not saying that that's what they were going for. You'd have to ask the director or ask Jonathan Majors, but it's the first thing I thought of. But more importantly, on one hand, I'm thinking, oh, when the devil offers you a deal, we go back to the original deal, he offers you an apple. But here he's eating it too. So it made me think of my riff, like, oh, you can have your Kang and eat it too. It's like, oh, he's having it. He's like kind of playing with that here, I thought. Anyway, even in this, how long does it, Dan, does it take even like a minute, if even that he's already winning us over with the way he's acting? I call his unexpected accessibility. And he's clearly, right off the bat, he's clearly got a little bit of what we always like to say. He's got a little bit of a meta way of looking at things, which we're always a sucker for that.
And I like the way he clearly has the upper hand, but he isn't like being like, like they're like both, Loki and Sylvie are super uncomfortable and like super on guard the entire time. But he's not just like, like smacking them over the head with like, I'm like Mr. Awesome, like, I can do whatever I want.
Right.
You can't hurt me, whatever. He's just like, they're totally freaked out, and he's managed to just kind of like, keep them off balance without like really trying to. And that's it's just interesting to see.
It absolutely, obviously, part of that is about the writing, but it's the performance and what he does, and also just how they, just the blocking involved, like the elevator. He's confident enough that he literally is standing with his back to both of them. Think about that. That's a very interesting choice. He's not even facing them. He's literally with his back to these. They're two Asgardian. They're basically, because they're both Lokis. Therefore, they're both Asgardian gods. Who at least one, if not both, are there to kill you. They both have swords. I'm not worried about it. Can't do anything to me. I just really enjoyed it. I just think, and when he has that line in the elevator, and again, when I talk about being meta, when he says something along the lines of, not what you expected, am I a disappointment? Hey, he's not just talking to them, he's talking to us.
Right.
Because whether we thought it was Kang or another Loki, which I guess were number one and number two choices out there, some other version of Loki or some version of Kang. But either way, we didn't expect them to be acting like this. And that's what really makes it. That to me is the surprise of the episode. It's not that it's Kang, but it's the way Kang is acting, or the way, because now we, even though they never, as you know, they never call him, well, they don't ever call him Kang either, but they certainly never call him Immortus, but we kind of, those of us with a little bit of comic know-how, or the ability to use Google, know that, I think that's the version you're doing here.
Right, yeah, because like Kang would never be like interested in like protecting timelines and shit.
Oh no. Oh, and just because I like pointing out just silly stuff, which I always wonder, were they thinking this when they did that? Did they think it'd be kind of a funny thing if anyone really points it out? So when they go into his, I don't want to call it his office, his chambers, or whatever you want to call it. Obviously Loki and Sylvie, or the two Lokis, they're both Asgardian. They're not British, although Hiddleston's British, and I don't know if she is, although I think she is. I haven't looked at, I don't know, Sophie DiMartino, I don't know if she is or not. Let's just assume she is. If I'm wrong, who cares? We know one of them is. But the fact that they both have British accents, which is also really Asgard. Why does everyone in Asgard have to have that kind of an accent? So he's offering them both tea. Even though I kept thinking, but they're not really British. It's like all the Romans and all those movies with the Christians and the Romans. They all have British accents. Anyway,
I liked how the elevator had a giant leather like couch bench. I thought it was pretty cool, and then like had like the same style furniture in his office.
Oh yeah, it was like a chaise. Anyway. Anyway, the set design and the art direction, I have no issues with how they've handled this series, more so than any of the previous two.
They spent such they did so much attention to detail on the TVA set. It kind of makes sense that they're going to come back for a second season, because it's a really good set, so it's nice that they get to use it for more than just 6 episodes ish.
Oh yeah. In a weird way, it kind of reminds me of some of the. I don't want to go too far down this, but what the hell? It kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the set design from some things that we saw like in early Legion episodes. Has that kind of nice, like, oh, they really put some thought here into this. They really kind of made it a bit more visually interesting than they probably needed to. They could have made it much more dry and bureaucratic, Brazil looking. I kind of like that they kind of went the extra mile. Okay. Oh, so speaking of TVA, we should bounce back there because we're back with Renslayer, and that's when Mobius shows up. And we get that little moment where he makes the reference to, now that we know your secret. And then we bounce to Fremont, Ohio in 2018. And we see that the Minutemen are pursuing Hunter B-15. Okay, I just have to get this out of the way. It's just personal here. I am sorry or truly sorry that they didn't go with an actual FDR high school that's right here in Brooklyn, New York, and they had to make up one that was in Fremont, Ohio. Because I looked it up, there ain't no such FDR high school there, but there is one here. There may be others in the country. I'm sure there must be, but I would have liked, because the one here, like I always joke about it, why I didn't go there. It's next to a cemetery and across from a garbage depot. Why would I go to high school there? But anyway, but that's when we get the reveal of Renslayer's pre-variant past, that she was what appears to be the principal of FDR High School. And this was done in an instance where I am glad that they chose to show us and not just tell us. Because there's a lot of things that they've done on the show which have been telling us, and I don't mind that. But this is something I needed to see it. For it to have an impact, I need to see her in that scene, and it works. I also want to mention about that scene, and then I'll let you say something, of course. I did freeze frame it. If you look in that scene, the diploma is on the wall. That's hers. It's from Ohio State University, and it indicates what her actual name is, which is Rebecca Tormenet. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. I'm giving her a little bit of a little French flair there. I'll tell you right now, that's a much more believable name than Ravonna Renslayer, which sounds like the most Harry Potter character ever. If someone told me, oh, the character Ravonna Renslayer? It's like, which Potter book was that? It's a total Potter name. Was there something you wanted to say about that before we bounce around?
No, that's good.
Okay, I thought I cut you off. I apologize.
Nope.
But like I said, in that scene, the way she reacts before they bounce over there made me think, oh, she must know. Which would also explain why she would have the pen, kind of like she holds on to something from her past. But then if she knows this, doesn't that make everything she's doing that much worse? And then why is she acting like so much else is kind of a surprise to her? That's what I'm talking about. I feel like I need to know more about her. And maybe we'll get more in the second season whenever that arrives, because it just makes me curious about her,
Well, yeah, she definitely doesn't seem to know exactly what's going on, but she's looking for reasons to justify her fealty to the big plan. She really has to double down on it. She's totally drank the Kool-Aid. She has to find a way to digest it now instead of puking it back up like the rest of them around her.
Right. I think we had a conversation on one of our podcasts about, I don't remember, it might have been about her actually. It was when some character and something we were talking about was using it might have been, it was Mobius, I think, when he was in the car with, Sylvie, using the phrase, the famous Machiavellian phrase, but the ends justifying the means as far as rationalizing behavior. And I had said, well, whenever you use that to rationalize their behavior, you always have to rationalize bad behavior. You don't have to explain good behavior. And all she's doing is rational. And I think you're right. Everything she's been doing is just rationalizing. Like we see in a later scene, as well as this one, that she keeps saying, well, there has to be a reason. There's a reason why she was doing this. She kept thinking, there has to be a purpose behind it. It can't have all been for nothing. And then what makes that interesting is well, a villain shouldn't think that way. It doesn't mean she's not. Again, very interesting. I have to really think about it. So when we pick back up again in, the domain of He Who Remains, after he makes a few wry observations about the two Lokis, none of which I think are better than when he refers to the Hiddleston Loki as a flea on the back of the dragon, hence why I used it in our intro. From that point on, we get, I call a most entertaining stretch of exposition. And as we've already said, so I don't want to be too repetitive here, it's his performance that really sells and overcomes what would, under other circumstances, just be way too long a monologue. Like, I'll give you just a little thing. Like the way he hits the K's when he says that little look by the lake. Just the way he said that. It's like, and because that's not how he speaks. I was like, oh, that's a choice. And it's like, oh, that's really interesting. And, you know, that's when he's making it very clear that he was the one who paved the way for the Lokis to arrive at his doorstep. And of course, again, as I said, it's almost a joke I make on every podcast, again, about being a writer. The meta writing line time of all time, when he actually says to them, you know, you can't get to the end until you've been changed by the journey. That's like rule number one in screenwriting or storytelling. You know, he's like, oh, the character has to change by the time he or she gets to the end of the journey. I just love that he said that in there. I thought that was like a very sly wink. Someone in the writer's room like, do we put that in, or is someone gonna go, ugh? Like, nah, put it in. We're only there for we're there for a little more than 4 minutes, but I'll get into that, a reason why I know that later. But we do finish up at Ravonna. It's pretty much what you were saying. You know, she's clearly kind of in denial, despite obviously that the timekeepers were shown to be fake, despite that Mobius's experiences that await those who are pruned. She now knows, but she, again, like we said, she still needs to believe she had a purpose, that there was some meaning to her existence based on what she did for the TVA, and her whole belief that now everything is going to be about chaos, death, and when he brings up free will, she scoffs at it. But I'm sorry, again, she keeps bouncing back and forth. When she says that only the one in charge gets to have free will, that's like textbook villain speak. It's actually textbook villain henchman speak. You know,
oh, yeah.
Even if she doesn't seem to realize it herself. And then, I breathed too heavy into the mic. Sorry, guys. And then when she actually says, I didn't betray you, and I was like, no, you just tried to kill him. And yeah, you can say she knew pruning someone didn't technically kill them, but you know, banishing him off to a place called the Void, that's pretty much analogous to killing someone. So I'm not giving her a pass on that. So don't tell me you didn't betray him. You tried to kill him. All right. So, but anyway, that scene ends with her, you know, after she knocks him to the ground, she opens up a portal and she's leaving to go find free will. Not a person named Free Will. She's actually trying, you know, we know who she's trying to find. I would assume it's the guy that the Lokis are with right now. So that's another story thread we'll be seeing them pick up in some form next season. So speaking of the dude who's detained, or the man who's maintained, or he who remains, whatever his name is. This is the part where he kind of when he's finally, someone asks him his name, or his name comes up. And he says he refers to himself as he's called many things, you know, a ruler, a conqueror, you know, he who remains, a jerk. And I'm watching that scene, it's like, hey, you know who else always seems to introduce themselves by saying they go by many names? The devil. And that's when he gives us this, I call it a slight origin story. And I love that it's visually aided by essentially some leftover oozing Terminator 2 liquid metal glob that he scoops out and puts in front of him. And then we find out how eons ago, a variant of his was living on Earth in the 31st century. And then I went, wait. He said eons ago, but it's 10 centuries later. And that's what reminded me of the thing that Sylvie said to Loki outside the doors to the Citadel, when she talked about how she was pruned before he was even born. And I was like, there's a really weird thing about all of these different points in time that are before and after, whatever. And then I went, oh my God. Don't you tell me that the sacred timeline is based on Matthew McConaughey saying time is a flat circle, because that's what I think you just did. See, I brought it back to another one of our podcasts. Anyway, back to this 31st century variant. He was a scientist who essentially discovered the multiverse. And as luck or destiny or whatever would have it, other variants of him in those other realities or universes discovered it as well. So, of course, they all make contact with each other. And as he says, for a while there was peace. Well, until there wasn't. And that's when you got the War of the Multiverse. And that scientist, the first variant, he weaponized that purple smoke monster we saw in the previous episode, which essentially ended the war, and he began to manage the flow of time from there. And that's when he says, you came to kill a devil. Ah, devil. See, I told you. There we go. If you think, and I love him saying, if you think I'm evil, just wait till you meet my variant. And I'm like, I really hope, I was hoping we would get to meet them in this episode, but I kind of, in my mind, I was like, we're not going to get to meet them, are we? But I was very excited about it. And I think it's right after that he mentions about living a million lifetimes. That was for me where I got, he's absolutely, between that and the future version, whatever. I don't know the Kang stuff that well, but I know enough to know, he's absolutely Immortus. That just put the seal on it for me.
Right, totally.
So he basically gives them two options. They can kill him, which means that void will be filled, pardon the pun, by a far worse variant. Or they can take over running the TVA themselves, do it in a much more, what does he say, in a much more benevolent fashion, to let them know the truth, but whatever. And the thing that I loved about the scene at this point is his reaction to Sylvie. When she starts going on and on, she's being her petulant self about his actions and what he's done. I love him. He basically just scolds her. He goes, grow up, hypocrite, murderer. We're all villains here. That we've all done these horrible, horrific things. And it's like, yes, that's the thing I think some of us are forgetting. If they're Lokis, sorry, yes, he is being somewhat redeemed. Our Loki is being somewhat redeemed, or he's being, someone we can root for. But at the end of the day, don't forget, this is a room with 3 villains in it. It's not 2 heroes and a villain. I just, it made me appreciate the series again, because I realized, they're making me root for Lokis here. That's very, have we been thinking about that at all? Like, that's who we're rooting for here. So anyway, seconds later, you hear these, this ominous rumblings of thunder. Hey, we're just talking about thunder earlier in this podcast. That I didn't even, wow, that's a weird coincidence. I forgot about this. That's when, what do we call it? Well, he who remains admits to one little fib. That he knew that everything that was going to happen up until now. Because from this point on, it's up to the Lokis to decide his fate, which essentially is tied to the fate of the multiverse. And it's at the point when Sylvie jumps up and, she's initially stopped by Loki. That to me is what officially ends, again, what I call that stretch of genuinely entertaining and compelling exposition. And since I know there's been a lot of talk about that's what they did in this episode, I figured in my inimitable, annoying Scott fashion, I'll break it down for you. It'll take me 30 seconds to do this, I hope. In this scene, the exposition was actually roughly 11 and a half minutes. And then you can add that to what was almost exactly a 4-minute stretch of exposition in the earlier scene with them. So basically, it's 15 and a half minutes of running time of what would be considered pure exposition. And if we include the opening logo as part of the running time, but we leave out the end credits, because I don't count the announcement of Loki Season 2 as being part of a show. So this episode essentially is 40 minutes and change, like 40 minutes and maybe 20-something seconds. 38% of this episode is spent on Kang's exposition. And I'm fine with that. But it does tell you, when people say, it felt like, yeah, almost 40% of the episode is exposition. That's usually considered bad. But in this case, because of everything you said earlier, it's not. It works. It totally works. So we're getting toward the end here, and we have the standoff between Loki and Sylvie. And here, Loki is being logical. It does clearly take a liar to recognize another one. So the fact that he believes that the consequences of killing, the maybe Kang here may be far worse than if they took over the TVA or something, it's kind of significant. And, all he's saying is, let's just take a minute. Let's just think about this. Reason it out. Weigh the consequences. Give it some thought. The dude is being Spock here. Come on, listen to him.
Huh.
But Sylvie, oh, you're like Peter Quinn in Infinity War or something here. You're running on pure emotion. Hate, pain, revenge. I mean, yeah, now we get to the whole crux of the Lokis here. She can't trust, he can't be trusted. At this point, I'm going to go Star Trek on you just because I know you like Star Trek. She might as well be Mirror Kirk at this point, And although they didn't do that, anyway, we need to have that Trek podcast we'll eventually do. So you got a brief fight. And she must know that despite what she's saying, this isn't about wanting some throne. That's silly. Because clearly that would have taken nearly 10 years and 73 episodes for that. Anyway, that's a little Game of Thrones reference. Anyway. So, and then at a certain point, Loki does get her to stop. He says it many times, in fact. The sword is poised at his throat. And they do share a moment. And they kiss, and the music swells like some sort of 50s romantic blockbuster or whatever. And she says, "But I'm not you." And she pushes him through a suddenly appearing portal right back to the TVA. Now, there is a question here. Do I think it's that important? No. But I'll still ask it, just for people out there. Was the kiss real? And for real, I mean for her? Or was it just being done just to distract him so she could push him through the portal? And you can go either way on this because there's some people who have the issue of, ew, I don't like the look of these two kissing. Maybe the chemistry isn't quite right. But if she's doing it as a distraction for him, then it works fine. I'll be honest, I have not actually made up my mind about it. I don't really care that much, I'll be honest. But in the moment, I was going, at the end of the day, it's I want to believe the best of you, but since you're making a bad decision here, I'm going to believe the worst of you, so I'm going to believe you're doing this for the wrong reason. Mm-hmm. Like what you said, rationalizing, whatever. And therefore, you're doing this just to distract him, so you can okay, push, you're gone. That's the way I'm choosing to interpret it, at least for this week. And then we get that final moment between her and, maybe Kang. And I guess before she, runs him through, she does say, "Aren't you going to beg for your life?" Again, love the choice. It's he literally says, could. That's it. And, whoever, either he thought of that himself or the right, I don't know. It's just such an odd choice, but I just really kind of liked it. Stabs him, and he says, "I'll see you soon." So, and I know people out there going, "Oh, it's like Ben Linus stabbing Jacob." It's yeah, I guess so. Whatever. She kicked him to a fire, maybe. But, she doesn't do that. Instead, she falls to the floor crying. So, and then we see the timeline, based on what had already been happening, and now it's obviously intensifying as it continues to branch out and splinter. And that takes us back to the TVA. We see Mobius and Hunter B-15 together, and they're trying to figure out what's going on in that moment. And they do say that, I think he says there's no turning back now. And that's where they say the actual title of the episode, For All Time, Always, which is actually the TVA's, I don't know, would you call it the motto, the slogan, their mantra? It's on all their symbols or emblems, for all time, always. And then we go back to Loki. He's just, and it's interesting, the choice to have him sitting there for as long as they do. Because they have him sitting there it's like he's realizing what's happening or what has happened, or he thinks he knows what's happened. It's like the weight of it all, and would he ever see Sylvie again? What's happened to her? Has doing this sold her? Has she, I know she just killed the devil, but did she just sell her soul at the same time by doing that? It's however you want to look at it. And he finally gets up and, runs out of the room, and that's when we see the TVA is bursting with frenzied activity everywhere as he's bolting around the joint. And he finally reaches the library archives, and he sees Mobius and Hunter B-15. And if you hear what they're talking about before he goes over and interrupts them, you already know what's happening here. Because he says something like, "That's 63 branches in this unit alone." And you hear her saying, "Does he want us just to let them all branch?" And I went, "Wait, what?" And that's when Loki interrupts him. He basically tells him that, "Well, we've made a terrible mistake." He basically recounts in a few sentences what I just spent an hour telling you. And that's when you realize that Mobius and Hunter B-15 don't know him. When they say, you're an analyst, right? What division are you from? And as, they call security to come to the archives. And that's when Loki turns and he sees that giant statue that's no longer a timekeeper in the TVA. And it's not that four-toed statue I was talking about before. It's clearly Jonathan Majors. And if you look at that outfit the statue is wearing, and then you go Google Kang the Conqueror, guess what? Now he's actually wearing, because you see like the neck piece and how it goes down the chest, whatever. That's the Kang the Conqueror outfit.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, now it's Kang. Roll credits, big time cliffhanger. No additional scene. God damn it! I thought we'd get another minute with Miss Minutes or something like that. And
I was hoping we'd see Sylvia like hanging out, like she'd just land in the desert by a pyramid, but no such luck.
I was hoping we see like maybe like all of a sudden the body of classic Loki reform from the dust or something, which obviously makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, well,
No.
classic Loki could be alive. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed to have killed, so.
Hey, with what's going with alternate this, that, and the other thing, everyone who's ever died in the MCU could be alive. The barely ever mentioned Uncle Ben in the current MCU can finally be alive because apparently the Tom Holland Spider-Man wasn't really all that broken up over it.
I don't know. I don't think Disney quite has like the cojones to be mature about stuff. But I think it'd be cool if we could have a scene with Ruffalo, Norton, and Eric Bana Hulks all at once. Bring Terrence Howard back in. I mean, I don't think that happens with people's personalities and stuff. But it'd be really cool if they did that. I could see it. Seems like that's something that's more likely. Warner Brothers would be more likely to do that with some DC stuff than Marvel would be. Maybe less whimsical about such things.
I think it depends on what the property is, because obviously all the talk with the upcoming Spider-Man movie is about all these people and characters from all the different Spider-Man movies who are going to show up in it, whether it be Molina from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans or Jamie Foxx from the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans, and whether Garfield and Maguire themselves are or are not going to show up in it. Let's face it, they're going to show up. At this point, I'm going to go out on no limit whatsoever. Garfield, pretty much, we all know is going to show up. The question was Maguire, and all of a sudden it's like, Sam Raimi's directing a different Marvel movie, right? So Sam Raimi himself probably said, dude, I kind of need you to do that because my character is showing up in that movie, going to be in my movie, They probably only need you to work on it for like a day or two. We all just want the thing where you're all pointing to each other anyway. That's all we're doing here. I want Miles Morales to show up in that as far as I'm concerned. I want the animated version to show up somehow. Oh, man. Now, but circling back to Loki, the fact, although we didn't get a scene, a post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, whatever you want to call it. But the fact we got an announcement that there will be a season 2 is super duper significant because the previous 2 Disney plus Marvel series are not getting second seasons. WandaVision, it was one and done limited series. Now we go off to the Doctor Strange. Falcon and the Wooden Soldier over there, one and done. Now it's going to be the next Captain America movie, aka the first Captain America movie I don't think I want to see. But this is actually leading to a second season. So that's why that thing I mentioned earlier when I was critiquing someone's critique, it's like, no, you can't say it's just promoting that because there's going to be another season. All these cliffhanger things, this is like classic TV when, the best shows ended on great cliffhangers. Breaking Bad had cliffhangers. Lost, oh my God, had cliffhangers. Go run the gamut. Dallas, no, anyway. So I went, holy shit, they're really doing a season. I mean, it's only 6 episodes, so it's not a huge commitment for them, but I was very excited about it because I'm going to say right now, since we're at that point of talking about the show overall and maybe even comparing it to the other ones, for me, it's a kind of a slam dunk because I feel that they stuck the landing here, and that was my main concern as we were going episode to episode. And the fact that they there was kind of a waste not, want not kind of feel to this series. I mean, the fact, if our biggest criticism of this series, or some people's, is, oh, we wish there was more, that's a good thing. So, that's like, oh, we didn't spend, and I love people going, the characters developed too fast. It's like, shut up. So, good thing you didn't grow up in the 80s, people, because we had these things called TV miniseries, which were all like these 4 or 4-part things, which showed character development happen, at an accelerated pace. I'm sorry. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a show that's like 20 something episodes that takes, half a year to watch, or, I hated the company. It just made me so angry. Anyway, this is my favorite of the 3. I really, as much as I do really like WandaVision a lot, and there's a lot to like there, I found there to be a lot of things I didn't love in WandaVision. And I didn't feel that as much, didn't feel that with Loki, and there was no boner, so to speak. Loki. I said it that way on purpose. I don't care. What was your take on it overall?
I think it managed to do like the neat trick of, while it is like setting up future stuff effectively, you don't really have to care about that if you don't want to, because like the character stuff with Loki and stuff is also like, there's like no corners are being cut. It's like it's doing multiple things at the same time, and you don't have to like be into all at once. So I think it's just kind of like a neat trick where they're able to do that. And for the most part, WandaVision was able to do the same thing too, where they just develop the characters while also like advancing like the story and advancing like, the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. This show, so like that was kind of like, setting up like, dark magic stuff, and this is setting up like, time fuckery and stuff. So both shows did that well. Of course, Falcon and the boring soldier did not manage to really do anything for their characters or advance any plot, unless you are a huge US agent fan for like some reason, like maybe because you're a fascist or something. I don't know, but other than that show is far less effective at like, both the world building and like the character stuff, right, and like having a compelling plot. Period.
If the only thing that I liked personally, as far as advancing the MCU is concerned, with the Fick and the wooden soldier, there is introducing Julia Louis-Dreyfus as essentially as Madam Hydra, or whatever. I like that, but then again, it's also because I like her. So let's face it, a lot of that is because it's her, and they I'll give them credit for, I didn't know she was going to be on it. I never had a reason to look at the IMDb page if it had been revealed ahead of time. I don't know if it was or not. And I went, oh my God, they got her to show up I did not. Veep is in, a Marvel movie? Holy crap. Or a Marvel TV show, whatever. And then when we see her in the movie we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, that was like, oh, I kind of like that. Really interesting when you think about when certain things had actually been filmed and how things would have been different had, COVID not happened. I've actually given that a lot of thought, because the movie we're going to be talking about was supposed to come out last summer before Falcon and the Winter Soldier would have come out.
Yeah, whatever adjustment they had to make I think they managed to do it better than I would have expected. So there's definitely some kind of like, better than average coordination going on with like their plans and stuff. Because a lot of these big, complicated properties don't manage to do that so well, but they're actually doing a surprisingly good job with it. In my opinion.
Look, anyone who's listened to us talk about geeky stuff over the last several years, we know that I have more DC leanings than Marvel, but I try to avoid the childish, comparing the two, because who cares? People get bizarrely tribal about it, and that's when you get people, acting like they're, people who haven't gotten out of the basement in 30 years, or knocking every, whatever, ridiculous comments you see on social media. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah. I give them all the credit in the world for how they've been pulling this off, and they've gotten exponentially better at it with every phase they've gone through. Because, when this whole thing was starting out and people were making a big deal about it, I wasn't one of the people who wasn't. It's like, well, it's essentially just a little thing they're tacking on at the end of each movie in the post credits to connect to the next movie, but it's not really intertwining into the actual film very much. There's, except for this character here or there, but not really that much when you got through phase one. But as it accelerated, then it really started to interweave with each other, and I was going, oh, I hate to say it, but they're really onto something. They're kind of doing a nice job here. And now with this show, the thing that's kind of really not shocking, but the thing that's really impressive is the realization that what we're seeing here, because this ain't no Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I liked Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had no impact on the MCU. It didn't. They treated it like it wasn't part of anything. It seemed like when it first started, they were like, I think Samuel L. Jackson showed up for 5 minutes once or something. And then they said, we're just going to forget it. No one needs to know that Coulson never lived. We're just going to pretend that as far as everyone in the Avengers is concerned, he was never there. That's why he never shows up at Tony Stark's funeral, for God's sake. Which is like, wouldn't he have been there? Anyway. Even if he's a robot, doesn't matter. He still would have been there. Anyway. But the fact that they did things in this series, and especially when you get, and I'm referring to this final episode, which it's not simply about, one can be cynical and say, oh, they're just doing this just to help set up the movies. It's like, well, that's one way to say it, but they're doing things that are going to ripple and affect those movies. This is the one that's going to be affecting, whether it be the Spider-Man movie or the Doctor Strange movie or even the Thor movie, because we keep forgetting about that. It's like, well, Loki's going to have some connection to that one, isn't he? I think I heard Hiddleston is going to be I think he might be in the Doctor Strange movie. I don't know if it's going to be the Thor movie. I think I heard he's actually been signed to be in it, which obviously is going to connect from the show.
I wouldn't be surprised if they keep Hiddleston out of the fourth Thor movie, because he'll be off, maybe doing some space stuff, and maybe they'll delay the fact that some Loki's going to be in existence, assuming this Loki right. Exists in that timeline.
Well, he's definitely I can go look it up, and I haven't, and I don't feel like tapping during the podcast. I've definitely heard he's showing up. I just can't remember if it's, Jason will probably message me, 5 seconds after he hears this. He's either going to be showing up for sure in either the Doctor Strange movie or the Thor movie. I think it's the Doctor Strange movie, although I believe they've already finished filming that, so that makes me unsure. But then again, they've kept such a good lid on that movie. Who the hell knows? I don't know. Anyway, really, I can't praise this show enough. I'll tell you something. If WandaVision got all those nominations and this doesn't, well, you already hate the Emmys anyway, and I'll be like, fuck you.
Yeah. Every year my bias becomes confirmed even better.
I know. I can't deny it. I know. I just like to see things I like when they win, because I'd like to see Bob Odenkirk with an award in his hand for something, or Jonathan Banks win an award. That's all.
Right.
Fuck the award. Fuck what the award is. I just want to get to hear them do a funny speech or something. Watching Bryan Cranston win Emmys was fun to watch. That kind of shit,
Yeah, we'll have to we should give him our own award, an STD. I wouldn't mind giving him an STD.
All right, so with that goat, because we're talking about Bryan Cranston, he is a goat, Anyway, let us move on here. Bookmark. Chink. We can start talking about that movie we said we were going to talk about. That movie being Black Widow. Hey, there was something. I'm going to knock this one off right off the bat. I think we were both privy to a conversation on a Facebook group page recently, talking about the bad cover, that is used in, I think it's over the opening credits, a bad cover of, Smells Like Teen Spirit. I will say I absolutely agree. Now that I've seen the movie in a theater, no less, that observation is spot on. That is an awful, painfully awful, distractingly awful cover of that song.
And it doesn't apply to what's going on the screen, at all. It doesn't.
You know what? Here's the thing. You're absolutely right. But here's how I would have forgiven that. And I believe, said person. And the reason I'm being a little, because I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more, that person and stuff with them connected a little bit later. So I don't want to shoot the load here. If they had used the actual version, because it would have been more about the tone and the feel the song gives rather than how this performance of it. And I know I just less than 5 minutes ago, I talked about how juvenile it is to, DC versus Marvel. But now I'm going to do that because I'm a dick that way. I will say, hey guys, I will point out last year, one of the great, most memorable things about that awesome Batman trailer we got is that they used an actual Nirvana song with, something in the way. So they used one that hasn't been overplayed to death, and it struck a perfect chord and a tone for the scenes we were seeing. So, I don't know. Maybe whoever put together the opening credits for Black Widow should have learned something from Batman. Just saying. Anyway. All right. So, let's get to our opinions about this movie. Hey, look. Let's just, right off the bat, I would say I liked it. I didn't love it. But I don't love most movies. I don't love most MCU movies.
Yeah.
So, but I certainly liked it. I didn't go, oh, I wasted my money on this. Was it, it was a matinee price, so it was really nice for me. But, we've both, I'm sure we've both seen and heard a lot of criticisms of this movie. And it's not, and again, it's not like the movie should not be critiqued in certain ways or at certain points in the film. Of course, all movies are open for that. It's not fucking Casablanca. But I think there's things that people are forgetting or not looking at this movie in that fashion. And maybe it's because y'all haven't seen a movie in a while or an MCU movie in a while, or maybe it's because the last thing you saw that was MCU was freaking the last two Avengers movies, which are these massive, massive major productions, or the Spider-Man movie, which is also kind of on a really huge scale. I think one of the interesting things about the MCU and their films is that many of those movies, not all, but many of them obviously they're in the superhero genre, if that really is one, but many of them can kind of fit or be packed into an entirely different kind of a genre.
Right.
And this
all these Marvel movies are, they're kind of split into different things, so this is basically like, a Captain America movie, just like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of exists in that frame. Yeah. So you can kind of compare those, against each other.
Right. Because, and again, I'm not breaking out any like, wow, you're blowing our minds, Scott, kind of observations. We all know this. Ant-Man, it's a comedic caper movie. Winter Soldier, it's a freaking 70s spy thriller. I mean, why do you think they hired Robert Redford to be in that movie? Why do you, that's like the most stunt casting of all stunt castings in the Marvel movies. And there's a lot of stunt casting in Marvel movies. And then you can just keep running the gamut. I mean, whether it be Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy, they're all either partial or pieces or amalgams of different genres that have all been refitted and retrofitted, however you want to phrase it, to work in the MCU or just this comic book universe. And Black Widow falls into that same type of category. I mean, if Captain America Winter Soldier, I guess, if that's like the 70s 3 Days of the Condor in the MCU, then Black Widow is like the 70s James Bond of the MCU. I mean,
right.
They clue you into that in the first 15 minutes because she's watching the worst James Bond movie of all time. Well, you know how much I hate Moonraker. I actually should watch it again one day. I bet my opinion will change on it. I bet I'll be okay. I bet I'll be like, I'm okay with this now. I've talked about it online. I won't go spend more than 20 seconds saying that was the first movie I saw in a theater that taught me how to say hateful things about movies. That was the one. Everything before that was, I'm a little kid. I love this one. That was when I hate this movie. I hated it. And then, a couple months later, Star Trek the Motion Picture. Oh, I hate this movie. All of a sudden, Scott hates all the movies. It was really funny. 79, not a great year for me. So, I can't believe I'm going to talk about this now, but I'm going to do it. So I want to address what I think might be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen addressed about pretty much any movie or TV show or anything ever on our podcast, on any podcast, anywhere. Okay. Now I've heard comments on Facebook, on Twitter, here's where I get to say it. On podcasts that I supposedly don't ever listen to, but guess what? Decided to listen all the way through this week. And I know at least one of them will be, or supposedly at least two of them will be listening. Good job, guys. Well done. Especially the guest co-host. Very well done. We need to poach him for our podcast. Let the other three do whatever they want. We want him. My only critique, and not really critiquing, what I want to say, dudes, you gotta stop at falling back on lazy words like fan service and filler, man. Ugh. There are terms that just fucking trigger me to no end. I hate when people say that. You might as well be saying, "Oh, I like the book better." It's like, don't shut up. Don't say that. Just don't say it.
It's just like using lazy writing as a catch-all for something you don't like.
Yeah, exactly. And we that used to be, wasn't that like a running gag way back when, like on the Jay and Jack podcast? It's like, okay, not everything's lazy writing. But filler. I just want. Filler's only. But they said fans. When I hear phrases like fan service and fanboys, I'm just like, oh, stop. Just stop. Anyway, again, that's just a personal thing. It doesn't even mean what they're saying wasn't technically correct. I just hate the term. It always rubs me the wrong way. And if I ever use the term myself, I hate myself for doing it. So, which doesn't mean I hate them, but no, guys, you 98% of that podcast was spot on. You didn't need to have those words in there. You know who I mean.
Yeah, that part of their podcast was clearly filler, and maybe just appealing to the wrong kind of fan service for that.
What fan are you servicing with that? Anyway, like I said,
bitter.
Now these people who have been making this observation I'm building to, which I already kind of gave away, I think early in the podcast, if I remember correctly. As I just said, a couple of these people, they actually listen to our podcasts. A couple of them I know would never stoop so low as to listen to us. Oh, no. By the way, right now I wish we had like our own like professional studio where I could just do these cool like sound clip drops all the times. Cause right now I want to do like, some woman from like Orange is the New Black or something like that saying, "You think you're better than me?" It's like the perfect time for that. Anyway, let me get to the point somewhere. They've been going on and on about the so-called gratuitous butt shots in this film. And by butt shots, I'm not talking about Red Guardian's flabby red ass. We're talking about ScarJo here. That's right. I'm going to call her ScarJo. Because you know what? I know how annoying that is. I'm going to keep doing it. So I knew about this when I went to go see the film. I'd heard about it because, it was like the comment I saw the most about this movie over that weekend. I was like, oh, I'm going to pay special attention to this because, well, maybe not that special. It's a public place, but you know what I mean. I was curious. I want to see if the observations were valid. Okay. Are there a couple shots that really kind of linger and follow her hindquarters as she walks? Yeah, there are. There's a couple shots. Absolutely. But you know what y'all should do? You know what? Go put on the first Avengers movie. The first one. Because maybe you haven't watched that in a while. We often skip it. We go right to Infinity War Endgame. Hey.
Or the first Thor movie.
I wasn't even going to get there. That number. You just wait. There's a rant coming. There's a rant. But if you just go to the Avengers, okay, first of all, this is not the first time there's been a significant amount of screen time spent on ScarJo's bum over here. And guess what? A whole bunch of other butts get a whole lot of play in that movie too. Especially Mr. Chris Evans' posterior.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, you could say we get a lot of Chris Evans' butt on camera in almost all the MCU films that he appears in, to the point that they made his ass a gag, a minor plot point in Endgame.
He literally checks himself out and admires it.
It's America's ass. They could have called it Rear End Game. And, oh, by the way, guess what? Hey, guys, Go online, look up other movies. They said the same thing about Wonder Woman in the Justice League movies and her own movies. Oh no, guess what? Go rewatch all the Spider-Man movies. Do you know how many times you're going to be seeing, the spandex covered spider butt of Tom Holland? Or if go back to Andrew Garfield. Oh my God, they're full of ass. Shut up. Honestly. Plus, with Scarlett Johansson or ScarJo, guess what? This is something she's kind of known for. Other than maybe J-Lo, she's kind of known for the junk in her trunk. It just is. It would be like watching a Salma Hayek movie and complaining, oh, there's too many cleavage shots. Stop it. Or watching a movie with Jason Momoa. Oh, does Jason Momoa have to have his shirt off all the time? Yeah, guess what? He does, because that's kind of what sells the movie. That's what he's known for. Aquaman usually has a shirt on. Guess what?
Well, there was a fair amount of that in like Iron Man 2 or something, but like this movie compared to that, it's not even close. I mean, there's a couple shots where just like, okay, like why is the camera like down there? Like, okay, that's why the camera's down there, and they're a little bit weird. But I mean, I didn't think it was.
It caught. Right, absolutely. It caught my eye specifically in one scene, and I was like, okay, but I realized like it's not like I haven't noticed her ass before. How would I have noticed that before? Oh, you know where I've noticed it before? Because I've seen her in other movies. That's where I've seen it. Because movies show that. Because guess what? Scarlett Johansson is not some up-and-coming ingenue. She's a big deal. She gets paid millions upon millions of dollars. A lot of these movies she's in, I don't know about this one, but I wouldn't be surprised. I did not look. I wouldn't be surprised if she had a producer credit on it. I don't know if she does. If she doesn't.
She had an executive producer credit on it, I thought.
Do you think the kind of power she wields, she's fully aware of this? She would say no if she was objecting to it. Just like Emilia Clarke saying, I don't want to be nude in any more in Game of Thrones. And guess what? Johansson's a bigger deal. She wields more power. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. This movie spends a far more time like mocking the fact, like having, her sister like mocking like sometimes she's in like a goofy ass fucking slutty pose than like actually objectifying her. And it isn't even close. There is a lot more time spent on that than it is on this. So I can understand.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, come on. I mean, I just got really annoyed with that because look, if it was like she was practically nude or something like that or something, it's like, but pointing out, it's like, yeah, she's wearing these, generally speaking, because her outfit is it's either this tight, black, whether it's leather or similar material, whatever it is. It's like, oh my God. Oh, you guys, you're going to be clutching your heart anytime Catwoman's been in a movie. Guess what you see a lot of in there? Oh, Michelle Pfeiffer and Anne Hathaway. Someone needs to get them to a doctor because we saw so much of their ass in both those movies. It struck me as such a dumb thing to say. And I know some people are going to get annoyed at me for me saying that. You know what? I don't care. Cause you know what? They're very smart and intelligent people. It's just a silly, and if you want to just make fun of like, but it was, and actually it wasn't those guys on the podcast. So the podcast I was talking about, I know you guys, you think I'm talking about you. I'm actually not talking about. I know you mentioned it, but you weren't critiquing it. You weren't putting it down for that. So I honestly don't mean you. So don't come down on me. The guy who kind of came down on it is not going to listen to this podcast. So fuck him. So, oh God, I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. He won't know it's him. He won't know. And what's the worst? Hey, I've been unfriended before. Don't care. So basically, I just thought, no pun intended. It's a silly thing to focus on. And point out, people who keep pointing out, you know what you're doing? You're either coming off dumb or you're coming off creepy. You decide which one you prefer to be.
Yeah. No, I went up to this movie I didn't really have any expectations for it. Like, and it wasn't like, something I had to have, whatever. But at the end of the day, I thought, they filled in, they fleshed out the character a little bit more when they didn't have to at this point. I mean, they did whatever, and it just it didn't feel like it was unnecessary. I mean, if that makes sense. Like, it didn't feel like we wasted our time watching it or like it was a total just, pointless thing. I just thought they did a relatively solid job and just kind of, maybe like if you go back and watch the character and some other stuff, now you'll like see some of her facial reactions and interpret them in a little bit different ways and stuff based on this. But
It was fine.
Yeah, and also going right with what you're saying. I mean, it goes hand in hand with that, and I'm just me spitballing. I don't have a note on. Ooh, excuse me. I didn't have a note written about this, but it just occurred to me while you were talking. Is, oh my God, I am not going to review or view or critique or whatever the phrase is this movie based on its significance to the overall MCU timeline. It's not an episode in a season of a TV show. That's one of the only really bad things about the whole MCU concept, which we can laud how well they've really put this thing together. And I agree 100%. But then, oh my God, wait, I can't just have a movie and just enjoy it for the entertainment that it is, because it doesn't do much as far as the overall MCU timeline is concerned. What are you, Kang? Shut up. Anyway, I just came up with that. I'm so smart. I'm right there with you. I kind of like the semi-Americans feel to the initial plot of the movie. I got a kind of a kick out of that, or at least it's Natasha's childhood. Because I didn't know that. I thought the story itself, I thought it was pretty damn straightforward. It's the kind of thing you can really strip down layer by layer. Is this a save the world story? Is it a straight up revenge story? Or is it really just about looking for your family? Because Natasha, she had finally found the family with the Avengers, and this is taking place after Civil War, so obviously that's been taken away from her. And the family that she had as a child was fake, and she never knew her real family. The Black Widows are more like a sisterhood to her as well. So they almost represent, or not almost, they do represent another family that she's trying to save. So story-wise, I like the fact that it could be both stone cold simple, but they do ladle in plenty of crazy town convolutions on top of it. Look, you're either going to go along with them or you're not. I look at it, I'm going to see a comic book movie. And this is one, they're not going for some kind of gritty, almost nihilistic realism of a Dark Knight. That's not what they're trying to do here. And it's not, like I said earlier, this is not like some big epic story like, the last couple of Avengers movies and also, you're also dealing with a main character. This isn't a character who's got the wondrous abilities of a sorcerer supreme, and you're not being introduced to an entire civilization and a culture and, a newly crowned king of Wakanda. It's none of those things. It's just not going to be on that scale. So in a way, I feel it's unfair that people seem to be judging it by those films. Because when you're talking about because we keep talking about the last X number of MCU movies, and then realize but all those last several MCU movies were all building up to this gigantic, Infinity War Endgame thing. Those were big. Each movie was bigger and bigger. And this movie just got scaled, really far down. So I just, and then, like I said, they chose to kind of go Jane Bond here, with the over top. Yeah.
Yeah, like the bad guy, has a freaking lair hanging out, up in the an air.
It's a total Bond villain thing, absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, just bounce around here. I love they got Ray Winston to be in this as a big. I mean, what was he the best bad guy of all time? No, Marvel's never. MCU has had some issues with villains. Sometimes they either hit it out of the park. They don't. I still liked him because he's a great. I love that actor, Sexy Beast. He's in The Departed also, but Sexy Beast is the movie to see for him. I hadn't seen him in a movie in a while, so I was just really happy to see him.
And the prison escape, Siberian prison escape, it's just fun. It's the kind of thing they do in this kind of stuff, and it was funny, and it's just and it must be cool. The ridiculous avalanche you saw was just goofy and fun, and it's
I didn't get the criticism this is just too okay. First of all, stop yourselves by going, it's not believable. You're watching movies that fall into the fantasy genre. It's about using your imagination. Again, this isn't the Dark Knight. They're not trying to be real here. And
but it still is somewhat realistic. I mean, that's kind of what would happen if you're like in a giant bowl and somebody like, impulsively like shoots a cannon to like take out some gunner. Just, she's just like done with his shit.
This wasn't
that causes avalanches. They literally like to make avalanches happen so they can like clear off the highways before like the avalanche can like kill people. They fucking come out here in the mountains. I'm in Colorado right now. They shoot cannons up at the fucking mountains and they force avalanches to happen. That's just what they do. Sound does that.
Yeah, This isn't an alien ship appearing above a motel during a big shootout out of nowhere. Or something like in Fargo season 2 or something, and we still like that. But here, like I said, we got those. You got the over-the-top car chases. You get the helicopter rescue thing you just described, and James Bond. Forget that. I mean, they go totally Mission Impossible here because these are all major tropes of those films as well, and that's a current thing. Because people are like, "Oh, I don't care for James Bond movies." I get that. I'm not gonna. I won't argue about that. I get that. Yeah. But the Mission Impossible movies is the bizarre series that's actually gotten better and better as it's gone on. You can just skip the first few and just start like from the fourth one on, quite frankly. But the fact that they literally did the Scooby-Doo style face switching, which was done in those movies, and someone's like, "Oh, I can't believe this!" Like, so wait, it's okay when it's a Tom Cruise movie, but we can't do it in a superhero movie? Are you?
Yeah, and I think they've used that tech in like Winter Soldier or something like it's previously established tech, and Captain America should, I think.
I don't know.
And honestly, I mean, like this is a movie about a character who 3 weeks before this movie is like dating the fucking Hulk. Like, you're gonna complain about realism when like there's a giant gamma beast like dropping around.
Oh, the banner, the romance that they forgot about. It's like, yeah, we don't want to do this. I just felt the way they did this movie and the way the genre tropes that they were embracing in it. Like I said, the James Bond, Mission Impossible, whatever you want to call it. It's stuff that they hadn't done with the other characters. So it really gave Black Widow a lane that would help her film fit within the MCU. Now, I get that I get why. They might have preferred like some sort of bare bones, straight up post Cold War spy thriller kind of thing. But that was kind of already done to a certain extent with the Winter Soldier movie. And,
right.
Give Marvel credit. They didn't want to repeat themselves. So, and beyond all the stuff that we've already talked about, the one thing we haven't mentioned yet, and it's the thing that probably deserves mention more than 90% of this movie, Florence Pugh. If that's how I hope I pronounced her name correctly. I apologize if I didn't. Not that she's going to hear this either. She's a freaking revelation. I mean, I didn't love her in the movie Midsummer. I don't dislike that movie. I like it, but I don't recall it fondly for her performance. It's not that it's bad. That wasn't what got me about that movie. But after seeing her in this, I'm going to watch her in about anything. Because if she's not, and quite frankly, if she's not stealing a scene, then David Harbour's stealing the scene. It's fun.
Yeah, they did good. They introduced these, new characters. They introduced, these like Russian characters who've been around for a while. Not that they're like super important, but they're just kind of fleshing out the world. And, there's some kind of funny, jokes like, somebody like calls him Crimson Dynamo, which is like a different, like, like the Russian Iron Man, and he just kind of looks like, seriously, you call me that? It's just,
Look, I just, and my favorite thing you already mentioned, it's her mocking Natasha, the way she falls to the ground with the hand in front of her, which is basically the way that Black Widow and Spider-Man always fall, which is always like, why do they always fall? I loved her making fun of that. I loved her reacting to when she does it, and she goes, ew. Look, it's about as meta as, again, I'm using that phrase, as these movies are ever going to get until they finally incorporate Deadpool into the MCU. I don't know how they're going to do that. I can't wait for that. But that's as close as they're going to get, is someone making fun of that.
Yeah, but yeah, on a whole, I was pleased with it, and I thought they were, kind of respectful to the character. The fact that they didn't have Evans or Renner show up like any kind of cameo, it's just like good. They don't need to do that. I mean, I could see them; it would make sense storyline, but just the fact that they let her just hold it up on its own merits instead of needing to resort to that kind of thing. It's just I like that.
Absolutely, cool. Absolutely agree. I mean, I think some of that is also Scarlett Johansson herself is big enough to carry a movie herself, as she has already. Where
totally.
So, and the character, the Black Widow, is actually a very popular character, and people have been, especially her ardent fans, the cosplayers, etc., have been lobbying for Marvel to give her her own movie for over a decade, quite frankly. Yeah. Do you want to get into one can get into the things like, oh, they waited too long, blah, blah. Who cares? I get it. Yes, that's true, but whatever. We can't go back in time and change things. Did I enjoy this movie? Yes. Is that all I really care about? Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. Well, I don't know why I need to worry about, it doesn't have to affect the DC, the MCU, storyline, whatever. It's just, it's a nice little additional thing. Whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't take money out of it. I mean, other than if you pay for a ticket, it's not like they're picking your pocket to make this movie. I just, and someone getting annoyed that, the post-credit scene, it's just a setup for us to watch the Hawkeye series. It's like, yeah.
Well, what else are you going to do? The Black Widow's dead in normal timeline. What are they going to do?
Right. No, two things. Number one, guess who probably didn't really care about watching the Hawkeye series until now I know that Florence Pugh is going to be in it. It's like, oh, I think I want to watch it now because I really like her. Tommy Julia Louis-Dreyfus is going to be in it too. I'm sold. Get rid of Jeremy Renner. I don't want him in it. I just want these two. That's number one. Number two, how dare you, or whoever these people are, and I wish they would listen to this podcast so they could get offended and I can say fuck you to them. You're really going to get annoyed with a post-credit scene that's setting up something else, in this case Hawkeye? Oh, gee, let me think. Didn't every other post-credit scene essentially set up the next movie in the MCU? Why is that any different? The Hammer is setting up Thor. This is setting up that. Are you kidding me? That's...
It's and it's funny too because even though it's been a long time since one of these movies have came out, still the thing happens where I'm at these movies and 2/3 of the audience leaves before the post credit sequence and just what the hell are these people doing?
Have you not seen it? Have you not read an article? I wonder, have you just seen the movies and never read or heard anything else about them? Maybe they've never seen any post credit scene. Ever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They bail out, even Endgame, they just, they're just bailing out, filing out their reviews. It's kind of you just watched 30 fucking movies.
How do you not know this? It reminds me, and this is, you won't believe this, and I feel like I've told this on the podcast before, but it might have been years ago, so I don't mind repeating the story, but I'll try to make it quick. I remember when I was a teenager, and I was watching, the movie Aliens in the theater. Great. Oh, by the way, if you're a kid, if you're a 16-year-old, whatever, 1986 or whatever age you are, you're seeing Aliens in the theater. It's an amazing movie to see in the theater. I mean, that was oh my God. I was that's the stuff summer blockbuster dreams are made of. It's just a great movie to see in the theater. Okay. Now, obviously, this is not the era. This is not a movie with a post-credits scene, obviously. However, there's a moment towards the end of the movie when it's kind of you get the 5 seconds of, it's kind of a fake resolution, a false resolution, which is a screenwriting thing where, it's just the music gets melodic. We just see it's just a starry sky and you see the ship drifting off. I'm not kidding. A lot of people were getting up to leave and I'd already seen the movie and I'm just staring at it are you people leaving? What is wrong with you? Because you were literally leaving before the big climactic fight, get away from her bitch and all the other stuff that happened. It's what is wrong with you?
Well, that'd be funny. Just all these people walking around, they just turn back and they see Lance Henriksen getting ripped to shreds and
they'll be that Star Wars movie was good, but man, I can't believe not one of them could fucking blow up the Death Star. It's wait, you left before they blew up the Death Star? Anyway, there is one little thing I can't ignore. I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's not a big deal at all. But I was wondering, am I the only one? Am I the only one who finds it just a little bit odd that the MCU now has 2 female-led MCU movies, which is awesome. Good for them. Great. But it's weird that those 2 movies, most, if not all of their story is told as a flashback. That they're not, neither of those stories, generally speaking, is a present-day story. Because Captain Marvel, basically the entire movie takes place in the 90s. And then this one also, it begins in the 90s and takes place, between those 2 movies we mentioned after Civil War. And again, it's not a criticism, it's just fun. Wow. I'm looking forward to when they do an MCU woman-led movie where it actually takes place now. Present day. But just saying.
Yeah. But no, I guess, a lot of people just seem to go into it. I guess I don't know what they were expecting exactly, but just kind of went into it looking for trouble. And, for me, when I go to watch a movie, I just, I'm not looking to pick it apart, No. I watch it. If it's lame, it's, whatever. And if it's like okay for a while, then I have time for my brain to catch up with me. And it's like, oh, this fucking Star Trek Into Darkness is really fucking dumb, actually. What the hell is going on? And I shoot myself.
Oh man, one of our favorite tackling dummies. I wonder if Chris listens to us or not. He knows how much I was just talking to him online the other day about how I'm trying not to dump on movies. Although the other day someone did bring up Star Trek Into Darkness on Twitter and I ranted about it for a few tweets. I will admit one thing. And again, this sounds like I'm being down on the movie. I'm not. I'm being honest. But I'm still acknowledging that I like the movie. I mean, if you're because with this movie now, I guess including this one, there's 24 movies now in the overall MCU, oeuvre, whatever. And yes, I actually gave this a little thought before we were recording tonight. And if I was, ranking them or something, and I have no interest in doing a list of these. Don't worry, guys. But just for this movie specifically, yeah, maybe I would only put it ahead of maybe 5 other Marvel movies. And I realize that our mutual friend, the podcaster, who does listen to us, so I'm giving him, a tip of the hat here. I think he had made a reference to he would probably place this in the bottom quarter of MCU films. And then it occurred to me, if I would say it's better than 5, and there's 24, doing my math here, that means I just put it in the bottom quarter of MCU films. It's above those 5. Again, but I even like, I don't dislike, except for the Iron Man, those 2 Iron Man movies. I mean, I don't even hate the Thor movies. I think they're the worst other than the Iron Man movies, but I don't hate them. Whatever. I just, to say that, to say it's in the bottom quarter is not saying it's bad. It's just, okay, but it was a solid, it gave me what I wanted. I wasn't expecting anything more. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, just fleshed out the character in the universe a bit. I wouldn't mind seeing Red Guardian again, and I wouldn't mind seeing this different version of Taskmaster. There's some potential for that character to, do something interesting after going through fucked up trauma and shit. Just kind of the thing
right.
that Marvel like to tell stories of, that kind of thing.
And since he mentioned this, and I think this might be the last thing I'll say about the movie, hopefully, because I'm getting to that tapped out point. But you mentioned Taskmaster. I hadn't mentioned that character at all. I know. There are a lot of people out there, the people who are, legitimate comic book fans, the people who know the character from the comics. I am familiar with who Taskmaster is. I believe George Perez did a beautiful cover of the Avengers with the Taskmaster on, just a full figure shot. So I know the character. I don't know the character well, but I remember that comic. I do know. And I will say, yes, I know they changed who it was. I know that was a big change. Now, if you're someone who you're a big fan of that character, or that's one of the villains you like, I get being annoyed that they changed it. If that's your take, I understand it. If it's a character you actually cared about. I personally didn't care that much about Taskmaster, so I didn't care that they made such a big change.
Yeah.
But
Well, to be honest, yeah, they really, Taskmaster's been, an okay villain, but there's never really been a lot of depth to the character.
yeah,
He became more interesting when he was like, there's like one time where, like for a while he was like training new superheroes because like there was some like, government program, whatever. So Taskmaster was, training heroes and stuff. It was kind of cool, but, for the most part, it's just kind of been, your cookie cutter Captain America villain that's like, slightly different.
Right. I mean, I am aware that any number of times I have come down on things in both movies and TV shows for the way they depicted, especially, it's usually villains, quite frankly. And where it's like, oh, they didn't get this. Yeah, but those were villains I actually liked or cared about. Taskmaster, I'm going to confess, I didn't care that much about that villain, so that didn't bother me. There are some cases I'll be honest, Iron Man 3, did I really care that much about the Mandarin? No, but I knew who the Mandarin was. I had read a couple comics with the Mandarin. I got that the Mandarin was a really big deal Iron Man villain. So I got annoyed with the way they stole that story, and I sympathized, and I felt the pain, and I ended up agreeing with people who were fans, like going, what did you just do? You just took one of the biggest villains and you kind of just ruined him. I believe they're bringing him back as a real character, a real villain in the upcoming Shang-Chi movie. But
yeah.
but that's an example of like, I get it. You're right. And
right. It was a change that was insulting.
Yeah.
And
I mean, all you got to do is go back in time and listen to our podcast and read those aforementioned CW shows and how angry I got with the way they ruined every other Flash villain on that show. For every well done Captain, Cold or whatever, then you have, wait, that's supposed to be the top? Oh, don't get me. And we know how much the Mirror Master was ruined.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. That's it. I'm tapped out. Ooh, 2 hours. Okay. All right, it's a good thing we're not going to come back for a few weeks. Supposedly. So, hey guys, if you like this podcast, and by the way, I noticed that I kept doing something where I think my air was like going into the microphone tonight. I don't know why that was happening. Maybe I wasn't talking closely enough. Maybe I was favoring my rib cage, or I don't know why, but I apologize if that comes out bad on the recording. I just realized that. Anyway, if you like this podcast, how could you not? Oh my God, that was fucking amazing shit you just listened to. Anyway, you'd like hanging out on our Facebook page as well. It's amazing. I sound like I'm drunk and I haven't had an alcoholic beverage in like a week. Hang out on our Facebook page, the Serious TV Drama Podcast. You can like the page and join the conversation about pretty much anything you want. I would like to see people talking on that page. It'd be nice. Anyway, you can also find the podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, pretty much wherever podcasts can be found, or almost anywhere. But you can find all 318 of our pods on STVD podcast.podbean.com. And here's the big two, the things I want you people to do. Please follow us. As I said earlier, follow us on Instagram now. Serious TV Drama. That's all is one word. And please follow us on Twitter. That's at STVD Podcast. STVD, of course, as in Serious TV Drama. Really, follow us on Instagram, man. It's, I'm putting work into that. So, like I said, we will be, okay, at the very least, we will be back in early August, like I said, with what I said will hopefully be the first of 9 amazing and fun-filled Breaking Bad rewatch podcasts for the next, 6 months, I guess it will be. So remember, between now and, I believe it'll be August 6th, everybody, watch season 1 of Breaking Bad. You got 3 weeks to watch 7 episodes. I'm pretty sure you can handle it. I can guarantee over the course of time, we will be covering other things. It's not going to be only those Breaking Bad podcasts and nothing else here. I know you and I have talked a little bit about the possibility of doing a Star Trek themed podcast. That's a possibility. I think we just have to decide, wait, do we do it before or after this season drops or that season drops? That's my concern. It's like, what if we do it and then like a week later the new season of Discovery comes out, or wait after that, like, wait, Picard's coming out next week, or so I got to figure out.
Yeah, it would probably be good to try to like squeeze in something before a new season something comes out, just so we can cover everything and to some extent beforehand.
Oh yeah, it's gonna. The way I look at it, we'll figure it out. We got plenty of time. Whether we want to do it sometime after like the new season of Lower Decks come out, whether I choose to watch that or I decide not to because I hated the first season so much, or maybe if I watch a new season, maybe they'll win me over, or maybe I'll rant about it even more. Ooh, something to look forward to. Because STVD, the ST will be stand for Star Trek. VD, I don't know, vehement debate, vicious dickering. I don't know. It'll be something.
Vitriolic disgust.
Vitriolic disgust. See, that's why you're here. Okay.
That's their band name. So.
Oh man! Oh, I just came up with a great band name. I was like, I need to write a present day story again because I want to have a scene with a band, and I already wrote it. I was like, zebras are just dumb horses. I want that to be a band. Anyway, there'll be a Trek one. There's other ones that will probably strike one of our fancy. There's other shows that are coming that I may or may not want to do a quick one-off here or there with. Who knows? Maybe not. It depends. Might be too busy. Stargirl's coming back in August. Titans, Doom Patrol. I have no idea. The Boys is probably not going to be till next year at this rate, the way I'm hearing about that. So who knows? I'm sure there'll be something else that'll pop up on our radar. Okay, let me end it because I'm rambling now. So Dan, thank you so much for once again taking time out of your vacation to record with me. So that's really nice. And so I will. You're an hour. Are you an hour or 2 hours behind?
2 hours away. Denver's Mountain Time, so it's 11:14 here. So that's late for you, I guess.
It's 1:15 here.
Yeah,
Whatever. I know for a fact we've ended podcasts at 3 a.m. here, so I can't complain too much. Oh God, those days. Like they were that long ago. All right. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, Dan. Thank you guys for listening, and you'll be hearing from us, well, sometime next month with Breaking Bad.
Yes, and don't forget to follow our Instagram page, which will be filled with gratuitous butt shots of me and Scott. Lots and lots and lots of them.
Oh, that's such a great idea. I think I will do that.
Ooh.
I'm taking one right now. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.